Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Paravajakacharya Satarata Sri Srimad. His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Charge His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Paravajakacharya Satarata Sri Srimad. His Divine Grace Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Ananti Kori Vaishnava Brinda Ki Jai. Namachar Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem se kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda. Shri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Go Gopinath Shamakun Radhakun. Gita Govardhana Ki Jai. Shri Vrindavan Dhama Ki Jai. Shri Mayapur Navadip Dhama Ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. New Dwarka Dhama Ki Jai. Jamuna Mai Ki Jai. Ganga Mai Ki Jai. Srimati Tulsi Devi Ki Jai. Srimati Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Sri Guru Gauranga Jai Srila Prabhupada. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Stavale Samadhi Vedanta Samitana Minamasi Saraswati Dim Gaudavani Bicharane Nirvisesa Sinyavadi Paskachari Satarane. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, we're reading today Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 5, text number 34. Varsha Puga Sahasrante Tad Andam Udake Sayam Kala Karma Svabhava Sto Jivo Jivam Ajivayat Varsapuga Sahasrante Tad Andam Udake Sayam Kala Karma Svabhavasto Jivo Jivam Ajivasayat Varshapuga Sahasrante Tad Andam Udake Sayam Kala Karma Svabhavasto Jivo Jivam Ajivayat Varshapuga Sahasrante Tad Andam Udake Sayam Kala Karma Svabhavasto Jivo Jivam Jiva Yavat Thank you. Mataji's. Thank you. All right, synonyms. Varshapuga, many years. Sahasra ante, of thousands of years. Tat, that. Andam, the universal globe. Udake, in the causal water. Sayam, being drowned. Kala, eternal time. Karma, action. Svavasa, according to the modes of nature. Jivaha, the Lord of the living beings. Ajivam, unanimated. Non-animated. Okay. Ajivayat, caused to be animated. Translation purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. Thus all the universes remain thousands of eons within the water, the causal ocean, and the Lord of living beings, entering in each of them, caused them to be fully animated. So, please repeat. Thus all the universes remain thousands of eons within the water, the causal ocean, and the Lord of living beings, entering each of them, caused them to be fully animated. Purport. The Lord is described here as Jiva because He is the leader of all other Jivas, or living entities. In the Vedas, He is described as the Nitya, the leader of all other Nityas. The Lord's relation with the living entities is like that of the Father with the sons. The sons and the Father are qualitatively equal, but the Father is never the Son, nor is the Son ever the Father who begets. So, as described above, the Lord as Garbhodakashayi Vishnu, or Hiranyagarbha, Supersoul, enters into each and every universe and causes it to be animated by begetting the living entities within the womb of the material nature, as confirmed in Bhagavad-Gita 14.3. After annihilation of the material creation, all the living entities are merged within the body of the Lord. After creation, they are again impregnated within the material energy. In material existence, therefore, the material energy is seemingly the mother of the living entities, and the Lord is the Father. When, however, the animation takes place, the living entities revive their own natural activities under the spell of time and energy, and thus the varieties of living beings are manifested. The Lord, therefore, is ultimately the cause of all animation in the material world. Om Agyanati Mirandasha Guranjanashtaka Chakshu Umilitam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Panchakalpa Tubhisya Kipa Sindhavivada Paritana Pabanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Oh, so, Very interesting verse, very technical. Of course, what is really wonderful is that here we're getting a glimpse, an idea of what the creation is all about, the creation theory, and how it actually happens. So, Srila Prabhupada mentions a very nice verse here from the Srimad Bhagavad-Gita, 14.3. So I just wanted to read that very quickly because it gives a real thorough understanding of this idea of creation. So, Mama Yonir Mahad Brahma Tasmin Garba Dadyam Yaham Sambhava Sarvabhutanam Tato Bhavati Bharata. The total material substance called Brahman is the source of birth, and it is that Brahman that I impregnate, making possible the births of all living beings, O son of Bharata. Purport. This is an explanation of the world. Everything that takes place is due to the combination of Chaitra and Chaitragya, the body and the spirit soul. This combination of material nature and the living entity is made possible by the Supreme God Himself. The Mahat Tattva is the total cause of the total cosmic manifestation, and that total substance of the material cause, in which there are three modes of nature, is sometimes called Brahman. The Supreme Personality impregnates that total substance, and thus innumerable universes become possible. This total material substance, the Mahat Tattva, is described as Brahman in the Vedic literature, the Mandaka Upanishad. Tasmad etad Brahma nama rupam anam cha jayate. The Supreme Person impregnates the Brahman with the seeds of the living entities. The 24 elements, beginning from earth, water, fire, and air, are all material energy, and they constitute what is called Mahad Brahma, or the great Brahman, the material nature. As explained in the 7th chapter, beyond this, there is another superior nature, the living entity. Into material nature, the superior nature is mixed by the will of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and therefore all living entities are born of this material nature. The scorpion lays its eggs in piles of rice, and sometimes it is said that the scorpion is born out of rice. But the rice is not the cause of the scorpion. Actually, the eggs were laid by the mother. Similarly, material nature is not the cause of the birth of the living entities. The seed is given by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and they only seem to come out as products of material nature. Thus, every living entity, according to its past activities, has a different body, created by this material nature, so that the entity can enjoy or suffer according to his past deeds. The Lord is the cause of all manifestations of living entities in the material world. Om Tat Sat. I thought that was a very powerful purport in describing about a very complicated issue about creation. You can see that goes on. Continuous fighting between the scientific world and even the religious world. Constant. But here in the Bhagavad Gita, it gives a very wonderful explanation. And what's interesting is that the living entity is considered to be like a superior energy of the Lord. It's described in the Bhagavad Gita, apareyam itastvanyam prakrityam vidhi me param jivabhuta mahabhago yedam daryate jagat. In that, Krishna says to Arjuna, that almighty armed Arjuna, there's another nature, a superior nature or energy of mind, which comprises the living entities who are exploiting the resources of this material nature, inferior nature. So this is the purpose of this creation, because we as living entities, although we're parts and parcels of Krishna, so we have a superior nature to us, but what the living entity is doing is that it's trying to exploit the inferior nature, earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and ego. And the gross and the subtle natures they're all inferior. The earth, water, fire, air, ether, and then of course mind, intelligence, and false ego. These are all material. They're gross and they're subtle, but they're material. And the living entity has this intense desire to exploit those things. And that's why we're in this material world. So we want to somehow or other exploit this gross and subtle inferior energy. But the problem is that when the living entity comes to this material world, it's actually captivated by the material energy and becomes bound up, contaminated. Prabhupada gives the example of like rain. There's a cloud, there's a rain cloud, and the rain cloud, it's producing water. That water falls down into the earth. It's pure in its cloud. When it's in the cloud, it's pure. When it comes to this material world, down in the ground, it actually becomes contaminated, overcome. So same way, the living entity, it's in a pure state in the spiritual world, but due to coming to this world, wanting to come to this world, and then becoming engrossed in exploitation of this material world. So this is something that's very important to understand, because a lot of people, when they try to see, well, why am I here? What am I doing here? What's the purpose of life? There's a lot of confusion. And that confusion is what creates continuous birth after birth after birth, eternally practically, in this material world. Reading yesterday, I was reading a little bit about the presidential outcome. So I don't know what the outcome is, but anyway, the thing is that they did an exit poll when people were coming out after voting. What was the exit poll? And the exit poll, number one, is economic development. That was the first thing that people were concerned about, the economic development. Then I think it was Black Lives Matter. And then I think it was the virus, the pandemic. That was what they were saying, the majority of people concerned. So you can see the nature of the living entity, economic development. So if we look at economic development, what is the purpose of economic development? It's meant for exploitation. That's what it is. To get ahead, create something, buy something, sell something, enjoy something. So this exploitation is based on the bodily platform of life. It's, eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. Those are the four pillars of world life. And this exploitation consists of those four items: eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. And it affects all living entities in this material world, even like animal life, insect life, eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. And this is the superior energy of the Lord, the living entity, becomes captivated by this exploitation. And in that way, the living entity becomes bound up. And by increasing in this desire for exploitation, for wanting more and more and more and more, there's never an end. One can never become satisfied. One just simply wants more and more. And this is the cause of the material world. And the living entity, therefore, he becomes so encaptured, so engaged, that he forgets his identity. He forgets who he is. And he creates more and more karmic reaction. So when I was reading this particular purport, I was thinking, geez, what can we talk about? So I was thinking that we should talk about this tendency for exploiting. And we as devotees, we should be very conscientious of this. We should be very conscious of these things, because we should be careful that we don't become part of that whole idea of exploiting for eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. It's a very difficult item to get over. But it's the purpose of life in Krishna consciousness to overcome this desire to exploit. And for a devotee, the difference is that we should be thinking about what we can do for Krishna. You know, how can we make Krishna happy? How can I serve Krishna better? How can I cook a wonderful preparation for Krishna? You know, how can I clean the temple very nicely for Krishna? How can I go out and distribute tons of books to glorify Krishna? How can I serve Krishna's devotees? This is really the mindset that we need to develop in order for us to avoid the intense desire to exploit the material energy for our own purposes, for our sense gratification. And it wasn't surprising that people were thinking about economic development, because really economic development means, basically it means sex life. That's basically what it means. You know, people, they want to go out and they want to get a lot of money. Why do you want a lot of money? For what reason? Why do you want this? And that purpose for most people, I mean, I can't say it's 100%, but a great quantity are interested in sex life. Just like I was thinking that during this pandemic, you know, you can't do anything. You can't go out and meet people. You can't go to a restaurant. You can't go to a bar. You can't do anything. And that drives people crazy. They can't deal with it because that's all they know. And why do you go to those places? So that you can meet someone. Well, why do you want to meet someone? Because it has some kind of exploitation involved in it. You want something. We want to get something from them. So this is the activity of the living entity. And that activity, this is what captivates us and makes us stay here, birth after birth after birth. So until we actually come in contact with a devotee, and until we perform devotional service, it's very easy for us to become captivated by the exploitation of the material world. Even how minuscule it may be. You know, I don't want a lot. I just want a little bit. But we should know that that little bit is enough to keep us in this material world forever. Forever. Literally. Just like we read in the purport. Eons. This is what's happening. For eons and eons, this is going on. So this is very important to understand. We're fragmental parts of the Supreme Lord. That's what we are. We're little infinitesimal little sparks. Mamaivam so jiva loke jiva bhuta sanatana manasa sandriyani prakrtistani karshati. It's described that the living entity is it's a conditioned soul in this conditional world, although it's eternal fragmental part of Krishna. And due to the conditional life, the living entity, he struggles. It's a hard struggle for existence. And this struggle also includes the mind. And this is a very important aspect, because Krishna speaks about the mind to Arjuna, and he describes that mind is the force. It's the whip that keeps everything going. Everything in this material world, this mind, this uncontrolled mind. And we see that we're parts and parcels of Krishna. We're sanatana. We're fragmental. We're just a fragment. But we're whole in itself. And this fragmental part of Krishna, it's struggling. And why does it struggle? Because it becomes captivated by this material energy. And what happens is that being a fragmental part of Krishna, we actually get a certain portion of what we could say independence. We get a little bit of independence. If we misuse that independence, then we become conditioned by this material world. If we use the independence properly, one can become liberated. So it's really up to the living entity. And whatever we're struggling with, whatever stress we're having, it's our fault. It's due to our activity. It's due to our desire to want to exploit the material energy for our purposes. And whatever we're going through now is there because of our past activity. So in Krishna consciousness, we have an opportunity to stop this misrepresentation of ourselves, to stop this misuse of independence and this desire to continue to exploit the material world. So we should see that most of us, some of us may not feel that, but most of us were shackled up like by chains, like we're shackled up by some chain, and it's locked by a big old huge lock, key and lock, you know. And this shackleness is the false ego, thinking that we're this material body. And this is what makes everything go round and round. Krishna says, or not Krishna, but Arjuna says to Krishna, Chanchalam himana Krishna, pramati balavadidam, tasyaham nigraham manye, vayor eva suduskaram. Arjuna tells Krishna that the mind is very restless, it's very turbulent, it's obstinate, and it's very strong, O Krishna. And to control it, to me, is harder than controlling the wind. That's the power of the mind. Usually the intelligence is supposed to control the mind. But the mind is so powerful that it even circumvents the intelligence of a living entity. And if you've ever been in a tornado or a cyclone or a hurricane, I'm not sure if any of you, I was in a hurricane one time in Tirupati a few years back. And it was scary. The wind was howling. The noise was just unbearable. And you'd always thought that something was going to blow away or it was going to like crash. And it was scary. It was just like there was no peace. Even you try to sleep at night, you couldn't sleep at night. Everything was banging. Things were banging all over the place. So this is the mind. That's how difficult the mind is. And Arjuna said that it's impossible. He doesn't see how it's possible to control this turbulent mind. And the mind is the whip. The whip meaning the force that keeps us in this material world. Because that mind, if it's not controlled properly and it's not thinking about Krishna, it thinks about exploitation. You can see a very rich, powerful person. They're never satisfied. They want more and more and more. They're not happy. You can give them unlimited, but still they're not happy because of their uncontrolled mind. So as devotees, we have to be very conscientious of that. If we don't control the mind, then we're going to become a product of this exploitation that goes on in the world for eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. It's inevitable, no matter how powerful one is. I think that a really good example of that, if you ever go to the Bhagavad-Gita Museum, if you had a chance to go to the museum here, and you see the chariot, and the senses, the horses, wild horses, and the reins, and then you have the mind, and there's this sinister look on the face. It's very sinister, kind of like sliding whiplash kind of thing. And the soul proper is there behind the mind, freaking out. Just completely freaking out. Because the mind is so absorbed in the exploitation of this material world. And this is something that we as devotees really need to become very aware of in order for us not to come back into this material world again. Because that's the reward. The reward is you come back here and you go through this whole cycle of the creation again and again and again. So the easiest way to control the mind, as we know, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has told us to chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, the great mantra of deliverance, this Hare Krishna mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So this is the method. Savai Manak Krishna Padara Vindayo. This is the process, this is the method to always remember Krishna. That's the end point. And how fortunate are we that you somehow stumbled upon the Krishna conscious movement, and we were given this wonderful understanding. Now we know what's the creation. From this we know that we're here because of this desire to exploit the material energy. And it happens on all levels. No one is freed for that. If you have a material body, you're going to exploit it somehow or other for sense gratification. And it's only by the mercy of Krishna. Krishna is the only one that can free us from this karma bandhana. Only Krishna. Because Krishna can do whatever he wants. Just like if there's a person that's condemned to death, if the king or the president, like if President Trump, if somebody came to him and gave him a good explanation, there could be a person on death row, and he could say, okay, you're free. He can do that. And Krishna is the only one that can do that, to get us out of the material world. Krishna is the only one. Sarva dharma parityaja mamekam saranam vraja aham tvam sarva papibhyo moksha yishyami ma suchaha. That's what it takes. That's what it takes for us to get out of this material world. Krishna just wants us to surrender to him and stop the exploitation and just simply serve him and think about serving him. Give him the best. Give him everything. Like Prabhupada gives the example about a flower. If a devotee sees a flower, immediately the devotee is thinking, oh, let me give this to Krishna. Immediately. This is what it means to be thinking of Krishna. That we want to give him everything. We want to please him, like Rukmini Dwarkadish. We want to give Rukmini Dwarkadish the best jewelry, the best flower, the best everything, best dressing, best turban. This is real Krishna consciousness. And this is how we can get rid of that self-exploitation desire. So no more karma bandhana if we just want to serve Krishna and please Krishna. And it's a remedy for getting out of this repeated cycle of birth and death in this material world. And we won't have to be impregnated again in this material world if we take this one life that we have right now and we give it to Krishna. It's very simple. You have one life that's, just one here. You in so many different kinds of entities we were living in certain types of bodies, and some were very disgusting, some maybe were very glamorous. But in this particular time period, in this part of your life, we have a great opportunity to abandon all that and just stop it and just serve Krishna and Srila Prabhupada's movement. Okay? Jai. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.